Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name is Repeat Ron, and today we're going to be doing another tier list in Deep Rock Galactic. This time we're going to be talking about all of the driller overclocks up to this point, including the Sludgepump, as well as all of their former weapons, so the Flamethrower, the Cryocannon, pistol, EPC, all that fun stuff. I'm going to run down what each of these tiers mean to me, and start this off by saying this is completely my own opinion. And if you have a different opinion than mine, that is perfectly fine too. First up, S tier is pretty much anything that is kind of overpowered, broken, overtuned. Just something that's really, really strong and kind of outshines just about everything else. A tier is just solid overclocks, really good. Nothing to complain about with them. They're just really solid. B tier, also pretty good, above average. This is where like a lot of clean overclocks and stuff is going to go because, you know, they're better than not having an overclock most of the time. C tier is just kind of the average overclocks, or overclocks that kind of change the weapon, but you have to build around them, or you just kind of have to set up sort of weird for them. So, you know, they're okay, they're usable, and usually I would rather have them than not have the overclock. And then D tier is the ones that I would really like to see improvements. They're kind of weak. They're more of a detriment to the weapon, or they do one job, but the job is kind of odd or oddly specific. So let's begin. Our very first one we're going to be talking about is the Flamethrower. So right away we have lighter tanks, which lighter tanks just gives you more fuel. Kind of a basic one, but a good one. That's going to go up into B tier. That's all it does. Nothing else. Just 75 more fuel. So awesome. Then we have Sticky Additive. Sticky Additive gives us one more point of damage and 1 more second of Sticky Flame duration. Both of which are pretty good. That's nice to have on the Flamethrower, and this one's going to also go up into B tier. Nothing real too surprising out of the two clean overclocks. With our balanced overclocks, we have compact feed valves. This makes it so our tank size is increased, our maximum fuel is increased, but our flame reach is slightly shorter by 2 meters, and our reload speed takes 0.2 seconds longer. The reload speed is not noticeable at all, at least I don't notice it whatsoever. The extra fuel is pretty nice, and if you want to go all fuel Flamethrower, that's pretty good. Compact feed valves, I would put probably up into A tier. They're pretty solid. If you want to just have a bunch of ammo with the Flamethrower, it's a good one to run for that, and it's probably on the lower end of A tier. It's nothing crazy or anything like that, it's just a fairly solid overclock. And then we have the Fuel Stream Diffuser. This one increases our range by 5 meters, I believe, but slows our flow rate down by a little bit. So we get less damage per second, although we are using up less fuel when we're doing this, but we have much longer reach. And going with a full flame reach Flamethrower is actually pretty fun. It's kind of cool that you can just blow fire at like the ceiling and kill stuff. So this one, again, another pretty solid overclock. This one's not bad. I would put this one up into B tier. Then we have Face Melter, which Face Melter gives us a lot more damage and faster fueling rate. So we spit out fire faster, but we lose out on tank size by a little bit, and we do lose out on reach by 3 meters. So our reach is the shortest then with this one, but we do have the most amount of damage and the most amount of damage per second. Face Melter is also pretty solid. You can melt through enemies incredibly fast with this. I would put this one up into A tier. It's good. I like it. And then we have Sticky Fuel, which Sticky Fuel makes it so our flames stick on the ground much longer. This adds an extra 6 seconds to the flame duration. This also increases our sticky flame damage, so any of the fire that is stuck on the ground or stuck on enemies will be doing more damage to them over time than normal. We lose out on tank size and we lose out on maximum ammo, which does kind of suck. But you still usually have enough ammo with this. It's not too hard to keep your ammo pretty high with Sticky Flames. I would put this as another A tier. I think I'd put pretty much all of the overclocks right here, and we start off really solid with the Flamethrower. None of the Flamethrower's overclocks are like fancy at all. Almost all of them are pretty basic and kind of what you'd expect, but all of them are good. I would use any of them more so than just not using any of them with the Flamethrower. Moving on to the Cryocannon, this is where stuff gets a little bit weird. So first up, we have improved thermal efficiency. This gives us more tank size and makes it so our pressure drop rate is improved. So both of these are pretty useful things. This one, like most clean overclocks, is going to go into B tier. It's solid. I don't know where I'd put it because these don't feel the same at all. So I'm just going to put it into B tier on its own over here. Our next one is the Tuned Cooler. Tuned Cooler makes it so we freeze things faster slightly. We have a slightly faster flow rate so that we can actually spray out ice a little bit quicker. But our pressure does drop faster than normal. And we do have a slightly longer startup time. All of that's not really that bad. I would say the Tuned Cooler is probably the best overclock for the Cryocannon. You freeze things the fastest, and if you're taking something like the Cold Radiance, which I usually do when I'm running this, you freeze everything around you incredibly fast. This is great for the team. You can build it with tons of ammo in mind, and it's going to be a little bit slow starting up, which is slightly annoying, but still, being able to freeze everything is just so useful for the team. I would put this one up into S tier. I think that this one is solid all the way around. Then we have Ice Spear, which Ice Spear is a really cool one. This one does give us 1 additional second of repressure delay, but it also gives us the Ice Spear. So we hit our reload button, whatever that might be, whether you're playing on controller or whether you're playing on keyboard, it's the same. I think it's the same on all of them. You press to reload and you charge up a shot and you fire out an Ice Spear that does very high damage when you hit something. This also does area of effect damage to around everything that's nearby too. It does have to be very close to what you're hitting though. And this one, there's not really a downside for taking it because even if you don't use it, you're essentially just using the basic Cryocannon. If you do use it, then yeah, it's going to take a little bit longer for you to wait for your charge to come up, but you do get to do really high damage to something. This does consume 50 of your ammo, so you don't want to be using it too often unless you're fighting like a Dreadnought or something, or maybe a Praetorian, maybe an Oppressor or something you want to just do really high one-shot damage to. Then Ice Spear is pretty good. I would put Ice Spear up into A tier. It's a very fun overclock, and it's not really a downside. I think it's pretty good. Then we have Flow Rate Expansion. This one is an awkward overclock to me. This one is kind of the most meh overclock that I think I've tried. You have faster pressure gain, but you also have faster pressure drop, but you also get faster flow rate. So you can freeze things potentially faster, but you can overheat the gun potentially quicker. This one, it doesn't feel as good as a lot of the other overclocks for this weapon. I would put this one into C tier. It's just kind of odd. You can build towards it to where it does do fairly well, but it feels kind of weird to me. I've never been a huge fan of this one. Not like something like Ice Spear or Tuned Cooler where it feels good. This one's okay, and I'm alright with using it. I'm not going to say it's D tier because it's certainly usable. It's probably actually on the higher end of C tier compared to some of the other C tiers that we've talked about. But I guess it's right there. I know we haven't talked about any C tiers here, but in other videos and stuff. Then we have our unstable overclocks, and our first one is Ice Storm. And I used to say that this one was pretty awful, and that's kind of because I wasn't using it all that right, I guess, because I was still assuming that I was going to use this pretty much the same, which you kind of do, but not at the same time. This one increases your damage. It actually doubles your damage, and it doubles the damage even further once an enemy is frozen. So you do a lot of damage per second. This is your highest damage per second overclock that you can do with this, barring maybe something like Ice Spear if you count heavy damage. But this does take away from your freezing power, which I didn't initially like, but I came to be okay with it, especially if you're running Cold Radiance and you freeze things around you, or if you even want to run Shatter, that's okay too. It's just best not to run like the cold things. You also lose out on ammo when you take this, but this one is particularly strong against Dreadnoughts. You can freeze them and you can be doing a lot of damage per second to them. I'd put Ice Storm up into A tier. Ice Storm's pretty solid. I don't think it's as good as Tuned Cooler in most situations. Against single target damage, yeah, it is better, but for every situation, I feel like Tuned Cooler is a bit better. And I also don't know if I'd put it above Face Melter or Sticky Fuel. I guess I'd put it above Face Melter. Maybe, I don't know. I feel like it and Sticky Fuel are both good, but for different reasons. So I'm going to keep it on par with Sticky Fuel. And then our last unstable overclock is Snowball, which Snowball makes it so you can charge up your shot and fire it the same way that you would with Ice Spear by hitting your reload. This takes 35 ammo and fires out a snowball that pretty much acts like a cryo grenade. It hits and freezes everything within a 4-meter radius. Well, or at least heavily infect stuff with cold. But you lose out on 100 tank size, and you do have that 1 second delay as well. This one, I'm honestly kind of just okay with Snowball. I don't think it's bad or anything. I think it's really good on Mactera plagues. And it can be good on like Swarmageddon. It can be pretty good if you're getting a lot of grunts. I feel like it's not as useful as I've heard some people say, though, where it's just as useful as Toon Cooler. I don't think that's the case. I think Toon Cooler is going to be more useful in most situations, especially against hordes, and especially in a team. But Snowball is better for things like Mactera. So it is useful for that. Snowball, I think I'd put Snowball on the high end of C tier, really. Because on like a Mactera plague, yeah, this thing's like S tier. On everything else, it's just kind of okay. Then we have the Corrosive Sludgepumps overclocks up next, which we talked about recently, but let's go over them again. First up, we have the Hydrogen Ion Additive. This one increases your damage over time from your puddles, as well as it increases the slow of your puddles. That's really good. That's just nice. I'd put this one up into B tier. Then we have the AG mixture. This one increases the speed at which your projectiles fly, as well as your projectiles are less affected by gravity, which can be kind of useful, but this is just kind of a nice bonus, I would say. I wouldn't say it's anything crazy, and I'd probably put this one into C tier as well. It's still nice to have. I would still rather have it than not use it for an overclock, but it's not one of the best ones, I would say. Then we have the Dispenser Compound, which Dispenser Compound is great. You have more fragments, and your fragments last longer, although you do less charged up shot damage. That's okay if you build this for slows or if you build this for damage over time. It just eats away everything, and you cover so much area. It feels kind of similar to Sticky Flame in that way. Or Sticky Fuel, so I'd put this one up into A tier. It's solid. Then we have the Volatile Impact Mixture. This one's another solid overclock. This one is probably the most ammo efficient, or potentially the most ammo efficient from the Sludgepump. Gives you high enough damage to one-shot grunts regularly. Its charge shot does really well against crowds. And the downsides to it are that your puddles do not last as long, and they don't do as much damage over time. But they do enough damage, and they do still last something like 9 seconds, which is usually enough to be slowing down anything that you need to get further away from it. Just shoot this one shot at a time for anything that's kind of a straggler, and then use the charge shots for crowds, and it'll serve you pretty well. I'd put this one up into A tier as well. Then we have Goo Bomber Special. This one is rather interesting. You charge up your shot, you fire it, and it fires pretty much the same way the Goo Bombers drop their goo. So in a straight line, but wherever it hits, it doesn't explode like the regular Sludge Pump does. This one just leaves a line that then will do more fragment area damage, as well as it will provide more fragments, and your puddles will last a little bit longer. So all of those are great things, and Goo Bomber's pretty good too. I'd put this one up into A tier as well. I guess I'd put it somewhere here-ish. A lot of these overclocks are pretty comparable or vastly different than one another, and I don't know how to really compare them. And then we have our Sludge Blast, which Sludge Blast turns your Sludge Pump into a shotgun, an acid shotgun. The main problem with this is that it comes with a lot of downsides. The only real upside you have is faster moving projectiles, and your projectiles act more like a shotgun. Downsides are it takes longer to charge up, you have less damage with your charged up attack, with your splash damage. You have a longer reload time, you have less ammo, and you have less ammo in the magazine. All of that is just really bad for the Sludge Pump. Even if you build full ammo, this one's still not that great. It's only really useful against large things like dreadnoughts. You can use it against crowds, but you have so many more of these that are just so good against crowds that it's hard to recommend this one. And even against just single targets like dreadnoughts, I would rather go with Ice Storm, Ice Spear, Face Melter, any of those, even Sticky Flames over that, or even the Hydrogen Ion Additive, just to be dealing more damage. This one's just, it's disappointing. It's D tier. I wish it was better, but it needs some buffs. Then we'll be moving on to the Driller secondaries. And first up, we have the Subata, the pistol. And our first one is Chain Hit. which chain hit makes it so if you hit the weak point of an enemy, there's a 75% chance that bullet will then ricochet, or ricochet, however you want to say it, into an enemy that is within 10 meters of you. That's not terrible, but I'm going to say that this one is pretty underwhelming, and I really never use it with the Subata. It's better than nothing, so I'm going to put it into C tier, but most of the time, well, you have no control over what it's aiming and what it's going to ricochet the bullet into. So if you hit, say, a grunt in a weak spot and then it ricochets it into the face of a dreadnought or something, who cares? It didn't do anything. Or if it hits an oppressor or something, it didn't do anything. It can still stack up some damage, so it's not bad. I'm not going to say it's awful or anything. It's just something that I don't really use. I could see people putting this into B tier too. I don't think any higher than that, though. Our other clean overclock is homebrew powder, which I am not really a huge fan of homebrew powder on the Subata pistol. This randomizes your damage between 80% damage and 140% damage. So on average, you'll get 110% damage. So you will be doing, on average, a little bit more damage. The main problem is the Subata already does kind of low damage. So randomizing the damage doesn't increase the damage amp up all that much. Even if you're running full damage with this and you manage to high roll, you can kill things a little bit quicker. But there's still the chance of low rolling. It's not really a great one for the Subata, and one that I wouldn't really ever use. So this one, you know what? I'm going to put this one into D tier. I'm going to put it down here just because I really don't like it. I could see people saying that it's C or B tier, and I would completely understand. But I really would like this thing to get buffed. I would like it to get buffed the same way the revolver got buffed, because the revolver used to be this amount of damage too, but then they buffed it to between 80% and 200%. And if you add up to 200%, then yeah, I would absolutely see anybody using this. And I'd probably say it's, A or B tier then. But as it is, it's not enough damage to make the Subata super useful. It's not a bad overclock though either, so I don't know. Then we have the oversized magazine. This gives you 10 more magazine for the gun, but your reload is half a second longer. That's really good for this weapon. It's really nice to put just a bunch of bullets in this and just be firing it, because this is probably your best long-range option outside of certain overclocks, like something like Ice Spear, at least in most situations. So this one is perfectly fine, and it's probably the best one for the Subata, or one of the best ones, even though it's kind of underwhelming or kind of basic. I would still put it up into A tier. And then we have automatic fire. Automatic fire turns your little pistol into a full auto pistol, where you have a higher rate of fire, but you also have higher recoil and higher base spread. The recoil and the base spread honestly isn't that bad. The Subata doesn't have terrible recoil. It's pretty easy to control. You will want to go with the larger magazine though in tier 1, because only having 12 rounds in a full auto gun just doesn't feel way great. This one's solid though. I like it. I use it pretty often. I'd put this one up into the high end of B tier. I think it's good. Then we have Tranquilizer, which this one is just really awkward. It's not one of my favorite ones. This one reduces your magazine size and reduces your rate of fire. So instead of having 12 rounds, you go to 8 rounds, and your rate of fire drops from 8 to 6 rounds. But you have a 50% chance of stunning enemies with each shot. If you had more bullets, or if this isn't a full auto gun, it'd probably be really awesome. Where it is now, it almost always feels awkward to just be firing this and stuff. It's okay in a team. In solo, it's not though. This one's like another C tier. And then our last one is Explosive Reload, which Explosive Reload halves your overall ammo, so you go from 160 to 80 bullets. It also halves your magazine, so you go from 12 to 6 bullets. But it does give you the explosive reload, and this works the same way Embedded Detonators does for the Scout submachine guns. So once you've shot an enemy so many times, with however many bullets you have, and then you go to reload the gun, this sets off an explosion for each of those bullets. That does 42 damage with each explosion that goes off, and this one can be really good for blowing up large enemies. You can kill Praetorians fairly fast with this. You can kill the Flying Rocks incredibly quick with this. And you're pretty much only going to build this for like ammo. So you're likely going to get most of your ammo back, since you're going to be going with both the ammo ones, because you're not going to bother going with damage with this at all. So Explosive Reload is pretty good. I wouldn't say it's as good as like the Embedded Detonators with the Scout submachine guns, but that's because they're full auto guns. and you can stack up a lot more damage per second. But this is a pretty solid overclock. I think I'd put it into the high end of B tier along with automatic fire. I don't think it's quite A tier. It could be if you're going with like a full ammo build, like if you're going with tuned cooler, or if you're going with maybe the compact feed valves, or the lighter tanks with the flamethrower, and then you're taking this as a secondary so that you can blow stuff up with. Yeah, then it's pretty solid, I would say. All right, and then our last weapon is the EPC, the Experimental Plasma Charger. And our first overclock is energy rerouting, which energy rerouting gives us a larger battery and faster charge speeds. That's pretty good. This is a B tier. Solid all the way around. It works with whatever you want to put on the EPC. It's pretty good. Let's put that maybe, I don't know. I'm not sure where I'm putting any of these anymore. Our next one is the magnetic cooling unit. This increases our cooling rate and makes it so we have less heat generated per shot. We have 30% less heat. That can also be kind of good. I can understand why people don't like this one though. Mostly because it doesn't give you any sort of real advantage over other overclocks, because the way that you're going to be using this is likely for mining and for using the thin containment field for damage. And for that, heat pipe and persistent plasma are both better than this one. That being said, this one is still a bonus. It's still not bad, but I really don't see myself taking it, especially when compared to those two. So this one I would probably put into another C tier. It's okay. It's kind of along the same lines as homebrew powder to me. I don't really see a point in taking it when there are better options than it. But by itself, if you're just looking at it as it is, it's okay. Our next one is heat pipe, which makes it so our charge shot takes less fuel, or less battery, I guess. So we go from having to use 8 charge to using 6, so that's nice. We also have a faster charge up speed, but we do have more of a heat buildup when it's charging and more of a heat generation per charge shot. So this one is a bit more difficult to use. This one, again, you're going to be using thin containment field to do your damage, and you're going to be using it for mining. And for that, it does have some utility. This one used to be probably the strongest or the most used overclock for the EPC, just for that reason. Then it kind of got nerfed, and this one hasn't really been as good since. It's still efficient to be using this, and you can build it up to where the heat isn't as big a deal, but you still have to kind of get used to it. You can also make it so the charge shots are even less, so they go down to 4 ammo, I think, and then you're twice as efficient. So then if you're just using it for mining, it's pretty good. But heat pipe used to be probably S tier, and now it's probably B tier. It's good. I'll use it every once in a while, but it's not as good as it used to be. Our next overclock is heavy hitter. This one increases our base damage by 12, so we go from 20 to 32. This decreases our ammo though. We lose out on 32 rounds, and we also get more heat generated per shot. This one is pretty much what you take if you just want to spam fire the EPC, which the EPC is not that great at spam firing. Usually you build this for just all damage, all ammo, and then for like heat generation on tier 5, because it's just less ammo efficient to go with. The charge shot build for it, it's just not as useful then compared to some of the other overclocks. And this one, even with that, is just kind of okay. I would still rather have the Subata with a lot of the time with some of its overclocks. Heavy hitter, I would probably put into like B tier as well. It's not bad if you build for it and you just want to be using it like as direct damage, as a spam fire weapon, but it's also not way great either. Then we have our 2 unstable overclocks, and our first one is Overcharger. This one makes it so your cooling rate is reduced, as well as your charge shot is increased, so it goes from taking 8 ammo to 10 ammo. But this does increase your charge shot damage, it increases your charge shot area damage, and it increases the area effect of the charge shot. This one's pretty decent. I actually really like this one. If you go with Overcharger and you take something like Flying Nightmare, which is probably the best one for this, then you do a good amount of damage to just about everything that you hit. You do damage to everything around you. It's great for direct impacting things. I did try using this, or I have tried using this with the thin containment field, and it doesn't feel as good. You're just not ammo efficient enough with it. And I would put Overcharger probably up into A tier. And then our last overclock is Persistent Plasma, which Persistent Plasma, now when you have a charged up shot and it impacts anything or gets blown up thanks to Thin Containment Field, this makes it so upon impact, the charged shot leaves behind a 3.25 meter radius filled of persistent plasma, dealing 35 damage per second, or 35.5 damage per second to all enemies, and slowing all enemies for 20%. And this lasts for just over 7 seconds, about 7.5 seconds. This comes at the cost of losing 15 charge shot direct damage and area damage. So you lose out on damage, at least directly, but you gain damage over time. As well as if you set this off with Thin Containment Field, you get even more damage from that, and then the persistent plasma slows everything, deals damage to everything. This one is a really strong overclock. This one I would also put up into S tier. I think it's really solid on the EPC, especially ever since Heat Pipe got nerfed. So this kind of fills out our list. I don't know if I'd really move anything around. I'm pretty happy with where all of them are placed. As you can see, we have some really good ones, some pretty solid ones all the way around with Driller. Some kind of average ones or some ones you have to build normally. And then, unfortunately, we do have some disappointing ones that I wish would get buffed. So thanks everybody for watching this. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you guys disagreed with this list or agreed with this list, feel free to put your comments down in the description. No, put them in the comments section, not the description. That would be bad. And special thanks to the supporters of my channel. These are my members over here on YouTube and my patrons over on Patreon. They get early access to videos like this. And if you would like to have that, then go down into the link in the description and click on either of those. Thanks, everybody. Remember to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.